This real side experience would open up with me on the grounds of what visually seemed to be a large university or college. Specifically, I would be standing within an outdoor area that would be very likely where sporting events and practices would take place. It was segregated into sections by large fences, buildings positioned on one side of the fenced segregated area, and to my left, running alongside the open area I was in, would be another fence, behind which would be a track designed for trains. Prior to my presence in this scene, I would find myself in my recreated UK former physical level house and in possession of a large trunk full of gold coins. Our physical level houses generally represent the consciousness on the real side, and that which features within the houses will be the various idea agreements and attachments that the consciousness comprises of, including the ideas that are the body forms of others. In this case, then, would the box of gold be positioned on the ground floor, and as the symbology goes, that which features on the upper floors are the agreements that are impacting us other dimensionally, as everything begins on the real side, the ideas affected other dimensionally initially, and as the agreements are held to, so they will filter and process through to the physical level. They will transition from the upper floors to the ground floor. That which then features on the ground floor will be the effects now impacting physical level wise, and also will be the agreements and attachments we are conscious of from a physical personal self perspective. In this case, then, the box of gold would represent an idea I was consciously embracing. Symbolically, this could represent the idea of the ears, for on previous real side experiences shared by others, where cases, chests or trunks of gold have featured, so this has been one possible representation, gold being very much the colour associated with the true reality, all according to a context, as there can be many viewpoints regarding real side features and elements. The real awareness on deciding to recognize the ears, so the personal self will be unconscious of the real intent of the real awareness which animates through it, until such time as references regarding this real purpose become so in the personal self's experience. Until then, we might say, the box of gold would only be featuring on the upper floors of the house, the other dimensions of life, and as the personal self is brought into the picture, so the box of gold now transitions through to the physical as an idea, and on the ground floor symbolically we will find it. For where the scene then would fade, and I would be present on what seemed to be the grounds of a university or college, I would have brought my box of gold with me, though in a more condensed, easy to carry form, a pouch of gold bars, but the literal representation was the same, that being the all is, suggesting then that the idea of the ears I was intending to deliver to perhaps the individuals present within this college or university, as this is our primary function, that of sharing the opportunity of the true reality, the new you sound connection, etc. Also in my possession were a number of other smaller pouches, and although I would never have revealed to the personal self what they contained, impressions revealed they were of the utmost importance, and in some way related to the various galactic projects all new friends are involved with, that perhaps I was not only on an objective of sharing the new you, but delivering whatever the additional pouches contained to certain key individuals. It seemed that the value of the pouch's contents had not escaped the ever-watching dark forces, as now from my right would be approaching a large group of what appeared to be humans, impressions revealing they were dark force agents of a kind, intent on securing the contents of the pouches I had in my possession. They had remarkable agility. They would be covering great distances in a single bound, jumping over obstructions as though they had spring-mounted footwear, and as the fencing surrounding the open area I was in separated me from them, they began to effortlessly clamber up the fence as though they were more insectoid than human, reminding me a little of how Spider-Man can ascend vertical walls in the movies, etc. Rather than engage with them, my first consideration was to mount the fence to my left and make my escape via the train track, but instead I would proceed to the buildings before me, as the very nimble dark force agents closed in. On entering the building, it seemed the agents were unable to follow, as though something was in place that prevented them from doing so. For now I would be met with an individual that impressions suggested was a very aware being, human in appearance also, and I would convey to him that I was transporting the crucial contents of my pouches, but that I was being hunted by the dark force agents who wanted to secure them, that if acquired, very likely they would be utilized for controlling purposes, as is the dark force's general motivation, whatever it was the pouches contained. A group of other beings, also those on their respective awareness processes, would gather around me as I recounted what had just occurred. They would speak of how, although all those within the university-style buildings were safe, beyond it were always lurking the ill-intended, the monsters, demons, and specifically they would make mention of the shapeshifters, which they suggested was very likely the beings I had evaded, based on my description of how they moved, their supernatural agility, etc. The individual I had initially encountered, in fact, would be in the capacity of a teacher of a kind, and although accepting of the sightings that many of the students had reported of the monsters lurking beyond the university grounds, he advised that my encounter be kept under wraps, as he didn't wish the student body to be further perturbed by the dangers lurking beyond the sanctuary that the university presented as. I have shared on previous real side experiences as to the presence on the real side of many university-like creations which are designed where the providing of the real is pertaining references, real education, etc. is a constant. There are many variations, but what is consistent is how all those that are present within or even take up residence, as is the option also, are under the protection of the real guides, that indeed no individual of an ill-intended persuasion may enter, only those sincere with the intent of his recognition can operate within their walls. Some of the universities are not even available as accessible simulation, absent of special guide provided invites. Others will be featuring for all in the other dimensions of creation to see, but access only afforded where intent with all life is sincere, and this would be the case with the college or university I was in, as impressions suggested. All the students within were those on their respective processes of awareness, including the group of aware beings I had engaged with, and others with greater awareness had the responsibility that goes with such, as operating in the capacity of teachers, or more so, real reference providers, such as the initial being I had encountered. My box of gold, condensed into a smaller pouch then, was as though a symbol of my sincerity, as though my ticket affording me access, and although the monsters were lurking throughout the grounds, such as the would-be stealers of the pouch of valuable contents, with their intents placed other than the ears, so they were denied access, as though the real guides had erected a barrier that would repel anyone of an ill-intended persuasion. It seemed this university wasn't where I was to deliver the valuable contents of my other pouches. I had simply utilized it that I was afforded protection also momentarily, and would bid the teacher and the group of students farewell for now. The scene would switch, and now I was traversing through what seemed to be a series of streets, still in possession of my pouches of essential contents, and I still was in the process of being hunted. As I always will mention, as we are the deciders of everything we experience, we can only be the recipient of abuse, harm, or elimination by others if we have the idea agreements consciousness installed in relation to other body forms that allow that this can be so. Absent of the ideas, then despite the best efforts of an assailant, they will be unable to harm us, as we are not providing the effects that they can assume the position of. Through the arrangement of agreements in a consciousness, do we afford the roles that others can assume, as though we are the movie producer, and all other beings are resigned to what we provide them as to how and in what capacity they can feature and impact our experience. And on the real side then, where our attackers do not have our agreements that they can bestow harm upon us, then the simulation will present as us putting down their efforts in whatever way it might, sometimes over-exaggerated, oftentimes very entertaining. In this case, I would be assailed by a seemingly endless torrent of various distorted body forms, all with the same singular objective, that of securing my pouches, and they would include reptilian forms, demonic winged creatures, shadowy body types, etc. Their efforts proving futile, as I said, I had no agreements allowing that their attacks be successful, which would make sense, for the contents of the pouches were so valuable, as I said. The courier of such would surely not be an individual that is vulnerable through agreements in relation to the very likely dark force attackers. And in fact, one of the means by which I repel attacks is through the assumption of far more capable body forms than those attacking me. My fallback body type in such situations tends to be a large and very indomitable two-legged wolf, as was the case here, and I would smash through my assailants with relative ease, ensuring the safety of my pouches. The dark forces are nothing but relentless, especially when they set their greedy eyes on a particular objective. Impressions revealed that my destination, where the contents of the pouches were to be delivered, was best referenced as a monastery of a kind, a location not religious idea embracing, but this was the sense I had of it. I would be attacked by a particularly formidable assailant, and evidently I had certain agreements in relation to it to an extent that had its effort more effective, a kind of scaled serpentine monstrosity, that although I wasn't eradicated, I was able to put down its attack. My right leg would be severed by the creature at the knee, and I would somewhat have to limp, half drag myself along the streets, incapacitated through my injury, with still further dark force creatures on my trail. At this point, however, the very same teacher from the previous scene and university would feature again. I mentioned earlier he was a very aware being, or he wouldn't be assigned the position he was in the university. For now, it was as though he created a means by which the dark force body forms still on my trail were unable to locate me, as though encasing me in a kind of protective bubble, and as I accompanied him, as he assisted in supporting my damaged body form, so we would proceed together to the very monastery where I was to deliver the contents of my pouches, and where, as impressions revealed, doing so would be in some way a key and a crucial step in regards to certain galactic projects, though the details are not forthcoming at this moment. In a scene that followed, I no longer had the pouches in my possession as though they had been delivered to the monastery. However, I was still being relentlessly assailed by the dark forces that, although denied the contents of the pouches, they instead intended to continue to harass me. I was now operating in a very dark and gloomy street setting, as though my return from the monastery had been taking this route to wherever I was destined for next. But interestingly, I would have coiled about my body a black and white snake. Impressions revealed that this snake was in actuality a reptilian, though taking this particular form, and through my association with him, so he not only would operate in a protective capacity, but I also had as though enhanced psychic science abilities also that I could utilize in my defense. Impressions revealed he was a stepping up reptilian, though formerly associated with the dark forces, and had developed his consciousness where he had extreme magical capability himself. The real awareness is unlimited in its ability to defend its created, simulated, inserted body forms, assuming there are no agreements held to that limit its effectiveness, and so really psychic science capability is only useful where individuals are personal self-immersed only, and so have denied themselves the protection the real awareness can afford. In this case, however, it was as though this reptilian desired to be in a protective capacity which wasn't really required, but to turn down his offer may have his personal self take on certain attitudes that wouldn't be conducive to an awareness process he had only just begun. Sometimes we do cater to the personal self-egos of others if ultimately it will be beneficial awareness-wise to do so, and so I accepted his assistance, and through his abilities, and those I was imbued with through my association with him, as he remained coiled about my body, so all attacking dark force agents, beasts and creatures were met with a failure, their efforts nullified, and together we negotiated our way through the dark streets of whatever dubious position in creation we were in. The real awareness could have simply transported the created body form to each key location, straight to the monastery and back out again, avoiding all the point-to-point travelling that had taken place, and all the dark force characters along the way, but then the experience would be less of an adventure, less likely to be retained in the memory on awaking, and also, as we put ourselves in positions in the dark forces' presence, where they commit themselves, they are racking up karma that can effectively then be managed. They can be put out of the way, even displaced to the phantom zone, etc. At one point, the snake, the reptilian, would depart, as though he dared go no further, and left to my own devices, so I would lean to the real awareness where protection of the body form was concerned. For indeed, I entered the final stretch of the dark streets I was to traverse through, and confronted with a very powerful black magician, a female, who would splice herself into multiple forms, which simultaneously attacked me. I would put down her considerable efforts, however, for despite how mighty a body type may be, or how well endowed with developed powers they are, that they can impact me is dependent on agreements I have that allow that they can. Evidently, agreements were lacking in this regard, and having nullified her assault, I would reach the street's end, and the scene would fade. Ultimately, I had been successful. I had delivered whatever the pouches contained that were of great importance, galactic project speaking, kept the various dark force agents and beings from acquiring it, and had established a contact with another university of stepping up students. One aware being in particular, the teacher who had assisted me, and another stepping up former dark force reptilian who was keen to assist me also in his own way, and it will be interesting to see how and in what capacity all the beings featuring in this experience involve themselves with what is to come.